Are the Toronto Maple Leafs and William Nylander getting really close to being able to sign a new contract and get Nylander back into lineup? The last 48 hours has been pretty crazy with lots of rumors and speculation going on through Twitter. We'll go through all that and get you all up to speed coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, the last 48 hours has been all kinds of information floating through Twitter regarding the William Nylander situation with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Then of course last night during Hockey Night in Canada's broadcast on Saturday Headlines with Chris Johnson and Elliot Friedman, we got a lot more information again, which kind of leads us to believe that the Leafs and Nylander might be close to coming to a resolution here, getting him under contract and getting him back in their lineup. Now, all this started Friday as the Toronto Maple Leafs were visiting the Columbus Blue Jackets. A random Columbus Blue Jackets fan put out on Twitter that he'd recently met Kyle Dubas and had an opportunity to get a picture, which he posted in a tweet. And he also asked them about the William Nylander situation and if there were any updates. I'll post a copy of that tweet here up on the screen so you can take a look at it as well. While he had an opportunity to talk with Dubas, he actually asked him too if he had any updates on the William Nylander situation, and apparently Kyle Dubas' response to this CBJ fan was that he'd have an update by 5 p.m. So of course he puts this on Twitter and kind of, you know, could he have been acting as a troll? It's really hard to say. I honestly do believe that he really did meet Kyle Dubas. I have no doubt he probably did ask him that question. I'm not really sure if I believe whether or not that was the actual response from Dubas or not. You never know these days. We don't know this person. Some people like to, you know, kind of get their 15 minutes of fame or whatnot through social media, you know, pick up some followers and kind of expand their social media accounts for whatever to make them feel good, get some attention. Could be attention seeking. It's really hard to say. And at the same time, maybe he was being genuine here and maybe he misunderstood Dubas. Although, you know, I put out on Twitter, I was like, imagine after all this talk, really, since it started back in July, and talk and speculation and all the things we've heard about Nylander and the Leafs throughout the summer and to the beginning of the season up until now, I just can't imagine a random CBJ fan in Columbus breaking the news here that they're really close and expecting an announcement on a Nylander contract or resolution here within a few hours. So obviously I do think it's possible that maybe he just reiterated the fact that, you know, we have until 5 p.m. on December 1st. Maybe he didn't hear him properly. Maybe he misunderstood him. Maybe he twisted his words around. It's really hard to say, but either way, that information on Twitter really spread like wildfire. It got a lot of people talking. Not everybody bought into it, of course, but some people always do, and they get all hyped up around it. So, you know, it's really hard to say. But of course, later on, we got information from Bob McKenzie, who kind of chimed in on this conversation and basically indicated that he didn't think there was anything to it, and that he had no information to suggest that the Maple Leafs and Nylander were, you know, a deal was imminent on a new signing of a new contract or anything like that, and that he didn't really put much into this information. So obviously Bob McKenzie is one of the top insiders. Really could probably call him the original insider as well. Been at this game a long time, so he's usually one of the first to know, and if he's heard absolutely nothing, it's hard to imagine that some random fan knows something that McKenzie doesn't. So either way, they kind of, you know, lit the Twitter world afire here with Nylander speculation, kind of get everybody going. But then it didn't stop there. There was more information. We saw another tweet also from Mark Savard. Of course, Mark Savard's a former player who's now working for Sportsnet. He would have some connections, obviously. He put out on Twitter as well that he felt that the Leafs were close to signing William Nylander to what he believed to be a $6.9 million deal. Didn't really get into a term a whole lot. He said that that might be the sticking point, what they're trying to hammer out as the final detail here to get this deal done. And he just cited that his sources, I mean, obviously I know Savard likely does know some people that would be, you know, in the know more than a lot of us would, but hard to say how accurate that was. And then it continued on even further during interviews with Mike Babcock, which I'll put up here on the screen, some quotes from Babcock, which basically he said we have significant pieces missing right now, and they will be here. Obviously, when he refers to pieces, that's plural form, meaning more than one player. Obviously, part of that's alluding to Auston Matthews, who's been out injured with a shoulder problem and is expected to return soon. I know a while back they were saying they were hopeful he'd return this weekend. Obviously, that's gotten pushed back. He's not back yet. You know, they're saying he could be back at one of their games later this week. So certainly a possibility there, but we know that he's part of what Babcock was referring to, but by significant pieces, you have to, you know, assume that likely he's talking about William Nylander. So he was asked again to clarify further comments, around William Nylander, and what he said was pretty simple, and he said that he knows that William Nylander loves to play hockey. He knows that William Nylander is a good person and a good teammate, and he's betting on Willie playing hockey. So he feels that this is going to be resolved soon, and that he will be back with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Basically, not in those exact words, but that's essentially what he was getting at and what he meant here. So with all this chatter going on around Nylander, leading into Saturday's game versus the Philadelphia Flyers, before we ever heard from Elliot Friedman and Chris Johnston on Saturday headlines, we had all that stuff take place earlier, which was just, rumor and speculations galore, which I know we've been trying to avoid getting into too much because there's been so much of it. You don't know what to believe and what not. But unless it comes from a reliable source, and I'll reiterate that again, especially if you're on social media, especially on Twitter, don't buy everything you read. There's a lot of fake accounts out there that love to spread rumors and get people all excited for nothing. Like there's one account called Rumor Break, which I don't think they're tweeting anymore. I think they might have closed the account down, but they love to spread that type of stuff. And there's others as well. Just be very careful. Like I only retweet stuff and comment on things from reliable sources. Like your Elliot Friedman, your Chris Johnson, Bob McKenzie, Darren Dreger, your reliable sources. When those guys talk about a speculation or rumor that something's close to happening, you can believe that. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. Some things fall apart, but at least it's a reliable source. So don't get sucked into some of that stuff because it gets you all hyped up for nothing. Well, that takes us into Saturday night's game. The Leafs are hosting the Philadelphia Flyers on Hockey Night in Canada. We go into the second intermission Saturday headline segment with Johnston and Elliot Friedman, and basically they're saying that they have information to suggest that the Leafs and Nylander are getting close. Now, they couldn't say a deal was imminent, but they said that they feel like they're getting closer, and that it's still possible, even after all this time, that a long-term deal, perhaps a 6-year deal, as what Johnson had mentioned, could still very well be worked out and be finalized here. Now, of course, we've been led to believe that because of all the dragging on and negotiations, that it very well would end up being a bridge deal or possibly even a trade. I mean, we haven't been talking so much about Nylander being moved out here. This seems to lead us to believe here that they might be coming to a resolution to keep him in the lineup, which I've kind of professed here all along, and I honestly do believe is their primary choice and their first and foremost what they want to do here, and it looks like they're getting close to making that happen. Now, Elliot Friedman went on to suggest that he feels the information he has suggests that the Leafs and Nylander are within $500,000 apart. So they feel like they've made good work. They've made good progress on the negotiations. They're moving in the right direction. We still have a week to go here. We have next Saturday at 5 p.m. is the deadline on December the 1st. So we're still enough time to kind of bridge the remaining part of that gap and get this done, get Nylander signed. We can stop talking about it, move on. Then we can talk about Nylander's play on the ice instead. There'll be no more updates to talk about. This is one of the longest dragged on items when it comes to contract speculation that we've had in a really long time. Like during the salary cap era, we haven't had an RFA without arbitration rights like Nylander here drag on this long. We've had other players in the past, like Mike Peck is a good example, that have sat out the entire season. But of course, all that came before the salary cap era. Things are a little bit different now with everything they go through for contracts. But when you're newer to the league and you don't have those arbitration rights, these types of things can happen. And these types of battles between management and player to get the right deal in place that's fair for everybody, it's far from over here. The Leafs are going to have a lot of work to do. And, this is really, really, really important for Dubas to kind of win this battle and get it much closer to what he wanted than what was being reported, at least, that Nylander was looking for. And obviously, I think it's fair to say on how long this is drug out here that they definitely were far apart in what each were offering and asking for here. So it looks like they might be getting close within $500,000 is what Elliot Friedman believes to be the case. So could we very well see a William Nylander, Toronto Maple Leafs resolution with him under contract sometime here over the next number of days before the December the 1st, 5 o'clock deadline? Certainly seems quite possible now. The other thing to note here that I do think a trade is getting less and less likely here as each day and hour passes by is at one point we were talking a lot about how Kyle Dubas was traveling around scouting a lot of other teams. We talked a lot about how the Leafs were being heavily scouted by other teams, that you really thought there was a lot of trade dialogue going on in the background that we obviously weren't necessarily all privy to, but they had to be going on, and the teams knew that the Leafs were in a situation where they might have to make a trade, so they were really scouting them hard to kind of figure out what other pieces they might be interested in, to figure out what might work for them to be involved to get their hands on Nylander. Well, that's certainly calmed down quite a bit. I know in the most recent Leafs games, there's not nearly as many scouts attending as well, so it makes me wonder if they might have been told, might be word around the league as well, that maybe they're really close to signing him in a deal to trade him is very unlikely to happen. So they're not going to waste their time scouting if they don't feel like they're going to have a chance to get this deal done. They'll focus their efforts on other methods and other things to do. So that leads me to think that they really are close. I think Friedman and Johnson are right on the right path here. It doesn't mean it's going to be a bridge deal. It could very well still be a long-term deal. And of course, the other key piece of information here that we've been talking about as well is that if they get him signed, the later they sign him, the higher the cap hit this year, which is no problem for them because they've got the space. It's future years when they get to sign Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Kasperi Kapanen, and all these other guys are going to be looking for big raises. That's when their salary cap crunch is going to kick in, and they're going to have some tougher decisions to make. So if they can get him signed to a longer-term deal now, then this year's not the problem. It's going to reduce his cap hit for future years, make that contract more affordable, leave more money available to get the other guys under contract, and kind of keep the band together and keep their window of opportunity here going for as long as they possibly can. So I do think that we're heading down to a situation here where we very well do see a Nylander signing before the 5 o'clock December 1st deadline. So, of course, let me know your thoughts and comments down below, and we'll continue the conversation. Do you think this sounds really close here that he's going to get signed, or do you still think a trade is still a likely possibility? If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up before you go. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.